I remember hearing that when the whole gangster rap thing exploded back in the late 80s, early 90s, that it was largely fueled by middle class white teenage boys, middle class white teenage boys. And of course, I thought that was funny because I was certainly one of those guys. When I was 10 years old, I just kind of fell in love with gangster rap in general, which is so funny. And I thought about that for years of why that appealed to particularly those that demographic so strongly. And the conclusion I've come to over the years, and I'm definitely open to other ideas and other thoughts, but like, back in, I don't remember personally, but like back in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, punk rock exploded in, mainly in the UK and in New York. But of course it went out from there. And I think one of the reasons that it was A, so attractive to the young people, but B, scary to the elder generation, was because it really felt dangerous. Now, in that time, punk has gone many, many different ways, and so has rap and hip hop. But in the early days, it was just confusing to people who weren't really turned on by it immediately. It was like, well, what is this? This is, same thing with, with punk. It was the broken glass, the safety pins, the crazy hair, whatever. It was just like so foreign and seemingly no talent musically, which of course wasn't true. But again, just violent and dangerous. And as I think about the explosion of gangster rap in the late 80s and early 90s, kind of think the same thing. Like, middle class Caucasian teenage boys. There was very little danger and excitement in our daily life. So suddenly, you had these guys who looked tough, talked tough. It was a new sound. It was just like, what is this? And I just immediately gravitated for it, and a lot of other people did as well. So I've been I can't say that I've been a deep dive, thorough lover of hip hop rap in my life, but I've certainly stayed loyal. I guess loyal is the right word to a handful of artists, especially ones that I got into back then. One of which, of course, was Dr. Dre. I guess right now I'm thinking about 3 tracks from 3 different albums. The first one is Express Yourself from the Straight Outta Compton album that he did with NWA, and then his song The Watcher from his 2000 album. I think it was just called 2001. And then the last song on his most recent album, Compton, called Talking to My Diary. Of course, there are probably other tracks that could, exemplify what I'm thinking about from the beginning. But I think Express Yourself was one of the first. It's just a fun, light song in the midst of all the other crazy, dark, violent stuff that was on Straight Outta Compton. Express Yourself. And I love it. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, "What? This was on that album?" I had kind of forgotten about it. And then jumping forward, more than 10 years to 2001, The Watcher. He was one of the first. He was one of the first kind of gangster rappers who had hung around, and again, like the song says, he felt like a veteran, even though it had only been less than 10 or 15 years. Kind of surveying the scene, seeing how things were going, and responding to a lot of criticism he had taken, responding pretty well. And it was just a wonderful opening to that album. And then jump forward. When did Compton come out? In late 2000 teens. Definitely more than 15 years. We've been waiting for a follow-up for years, but nothing ever came until finally the album, or the movie Straight Outta Compton, came out, and then he released the album Compton. Again, the final track, there's a lot of collaborations on the whole album, as his other albums are, but Talking to My Diary, all 3 of these songs, Express Yourself, The Watcher, and Talking to My Diary, are all just him. Now, I don't know who wrote the lyrics. He was much more of a producer and beat maker than a lyricist, but he did have a very distinct delivery as well. I know Eminem wrote the lyrics to The Watcher, but I'm not sure who wrote Express Yourself and Talking to My Diary. But whoever wrote for him certainly put in the lyrics what he wanted to say. And again, Talking to My Diary is kind of like The Watcher, but even farther away. Like he's looking back. He talks about the early days with NWA. He talked about Eazy-E and Ice Cube, and it's just a. I mean, fingers crossed it won't be the last full album we ever get from Dr. Dre. But if it so happens to be, then that song "Talking to My Diary" is a pretty good summation of his career. But again, fingers crossed we'll get more from you, Dre.